barbecue capital of the world and home of Elvis Presley. Please welcome your co-host, Bob Furness.
A contact center job either finds you in a moment of need,
right,
or you find it in a moment of need, right? I need a job, and or it could be that I'm working an opportunity in a contact center.
And from the tornado capital of the world, home of the Oklahoma Sooners, here's your co-host, Amos Tanuma.
It must be Friday, so welcome to the Contact Center Show. I'm your host, Amos, and I've got my partner in crime and co-host, Bob Furness. Bob, how are you, man?
How are you doing, Amos Tanuma? What's it look like on Friday morning for you?
It's in Oklahoma City. It's Friday morning. I'm talking to you, which means there's beer or martini specifically in my future. So it's a good day.
Good deal.
It's a good day.
Like a good Friday.
Let's jump right in. We want to do a different show today. You know, we show up to these shows and we answer your questions, and most of your questions about problems and challenges you have, and we talk about issues of the day. So I was looking at Gallup polls. You know, Gallup does everything. They poll everything, and I noticed a small uptick in customer satisfaction. And I thought, hey, on this beautiful Friday morning, let's accentuate the positive today. So I want to talk about what's working, which those of you who are listening, particularly those of you who work in a contact center around support and service, know that we never talk about what's working. and it's the very nature of service. By definition, you tend to only focus on the minority, the outliers. You're here to solve those outliers when things deviate from the plan. But let's talk about what's working. Clearly, there are some positive things going on there. What have you seen, and are you a little bit surprised, or you think it's consistent that customer satisfaction, right? Again, this is not NPS or anything. It's just the broad how customers feel it had a slight uptick this past year.
Do you think it had something to do with COVID? No, I mean everything had something to do with COVID, but
yeah,
perhaps we've interacted differently because of COVID. We've interacted with companies that we never interacted with. I mean, there's been an uptick in the market, for instance, in the call center market, of grocery stores needing call centers, needing contact centers.
Yep.
And all the nuances of what that means. So I'm talking to brands that I haven't talked to before, and I'm dealing with things differently than I did before. So I think that's probably some underlying. It'd be for the sociologist or the data scientist to figure out what the underlying reasons are. But why is service getting better? What I found is people are still the key to those kind of interactions.
Yeah.
And
listen, I want to be clear and on the record that I don't know if I was surveyed. I don't remember taking any survey, but I would have answered no. Like my personal service hasn't there, but it did point to the fact that there are things that are working. And let me double click on the point you said about the people side. You know, the thing that last year did is it put a spotlight in the contact center, and it was tough. And to your point, you know, I was having a conversation this week with a client, and you know, they had to stop me when I kept talking about the history of their contact center, what was happening. They said, no, Moss. 100%. The way most people reached us, like 90% of the people who reached us used to come physically to us. And then one day they couldn't do that anymore. So we are brand shiny new in the skin. We didn't have a contact center. We had a phone number you could call, but this whole thing. So no, I don't have history beyond the last, 10 months. So it's this acknowledgement. So the contact center gets on the spotlight, and overall, I think we passed the thing in terms of, like, in an emergency, when people sort of needed support, when the physical location couldn't be there, again, the contact center was there, checking the box to at least, I'm not saying it was great. I'm not saying calls didn't go unanswered, but it's stepped up and it's gained this. And what organizations and people are saying is, now we're not going back. The reason I was having that conversation was they now want to do it well. They're going to physically open their locations, but they just have recognized that customer behavior has changed. So I think you're correct in that this COVID then brought the contact center front and center, and by and large, with some bumps in the road, I think it passed the test and rescued everyone from a triage perspective. Now it's about how do we do it really well.
Well, it passed the test, and now we as customer service, we used to be invited into the boardroom to give our perspectives. We're now invited into the boardroom to give our recommendations.
Right.
We used to give them what customer service was and what the numbers were, and maybe had a small voice, but all of a sudden the question is, well, how much money would it cost us? We outsourced this for a period of time. How much money would it cost us to bring this in house and do it right? What's the technology? And I'll land there for a second. In addition to people, which I always want to start with, and if I don't, it's usually a mistake. Technology has gotten better.
Oh yeah.
I mean, my chats have gotten better. They've gotten better because they interact with me differently. My chats have, now you and I have a whole session on bad chatbots, but if I step back and go, okay, but yeah, I'm still able to get answers sometimes on a chat that used to have to be a whole time. Right. So overall, if you talk me through it, that's a better experience.
Absolutely.
So it's interesting, and I think it's something we should celebrate, that even in a pandemic, when everything else was either not available or not possible, that our industry, our organization stepped up and said, hey, we're going to solve these problems. And now customers are going, and we're happy. Again, tough part is we're happy and we're not going back. So right. we're not gonna go into the store to solve our problems. We want to know what it is online. We want to be able to talk to somebody. So that's gonna require some shifting of budgets around into the organization compared to where they were.
Yeah, and maybe I'm in my own bubble, but I want to go back to what you said about, and you've used the term, contact center heroes and essential workers. So in all the conversations about essential workers that happened over this year, I don't think our people were talked about nearly enough.
Right.
Nerds, like I don't think, and it was this week, this conversation I had this week that even made it just dawn on me even more that I was having this conversation with the C-suite executive, and he just had to cut me off and say, listen, people, the way we served customers were people came here physically. And one day we just couldn't do that anymore. And the services they provide, by the way, are like life and death stuff. So it's not like they're selling, So now all of a sudden we have to serve this same population remotely. And all of a sudden our call center there. So you want to talk about an essential worker and and all the things we did. And I hope for those of you who are listening who are leaders, I hope you did the same thing, give them bonuses and all of that. Look, your company and organizations, governmental agencies, public agencies, the whole thing would have come crashing down and there would have been real life consequences. I don't mean to be hyperbolic. If it weren't for your contact center, like you were screwed. And they could work from home, they could do all of those things. But I think that part, maybe in part why the sentiment is going, oh my gosh, I mean, there was bumps on the road, but it sounds like we all came through it and go, there were bumps in the road, but we were thankful that the grocery store person was there. And in our world, that the contact center, yes, I waited on hold for 2 hours, but there was a voice on the other end who helped me through whatever I was going. I don't think we promoted those group of people as essential workers enough as we did some of the others.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. That
Yeah.
and there are very few parts of the essential environment that doesn't have some focus around contact centers. In Houston, Texas, when all of the power went out and nobody could get electricity, the essential worker sitting in a contact center somewhere for that company had to answer those questions. There had to be answers to those questions, and it was life and death kinds of stuff. So you're correct. It definitely is. And when you talk about heroes, they are folks that just figured out how to use their laptop or figured out how to use their computer that they had never done before to answer phone calls.
Listen, I mean, in this same deal, and it's because it's fresh on my mind. He talked about, you know what the remote contact center was when they started? They were doing hunt groups that was calling people's cell phones. Right? Like, remember the old hunt groups?
The innovation and the ability to just figure it out over a three-week period, 3-week period is amazing.
Yeah, it would just, okay, for this hotline, it would just dial your cell if you didn't answer, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't think I've heard the term hunt group, and you know, you had those things in your AT&T, your Bell South thing, and you say, okay, you put these DIDs in anyway. Is that, but no, I'm glad we had that conversation, and frankly, if you're listening to the show, for those of you, and we see the demographics. Those of you who are senior leaders, and we have plenty of those who listen to us. I think I hope that you made your organization step up, you know, from a reward perspective, but much more than that, from a recognition perspective. Let's make sure collectively as an industry, and when we post this show, we will do our job to do that. There was lots of talk about heroes and essential workers and all of that, all well deserved. I think our contact center people deserve to be in that mix. That makes this transition a little bit awkward because I want to tell you about the story I heard in the news. It's actually local here in that this is a contact center. So there's a 911 contact center, and a person called 911, wanted some help, and the rep goes, so this call recording was released on the news, obviously, and the rep goes, how can I help you? Anyway, turns out this lady is struggling with the two teenagers, like they're fighting and they're roughhousing the van. You know, she had this conversation. It was kind of clear. It was like, okay. So the rep sort of goes, well, I don't really know what you want. Do you want me to send the cops out there to shoot them? Like, what is the, what do you want? So of course this rep is in trouble, is get fired. And I got to tell you, I would not have fired the rep. Like, I get it. I get the PR thing and maybe some coaching around maybe the shooting the teenagers was a little much, but I was listening to the call going, like, you know, like what did she want from the rep? So what say you, Bob? Which side are you on? Are you with the little guy, the rep, or the big?
I'm with the little guy, but I can't have my person asking that question. You know, and what. I think we touched on this one of our other shows about preparing reps for the edge calls, preparing reps for the crazy, because customers, let's face it, customers will say the craziest things, and agents will sometimes say the craziest things, and so you've got to prepare them for the crazy. And then I don't know if I would have fired it. Probably the PR aspects of that one from a 911 call is probably a little bit different than if they were a flower company or a cell phone company. But that's a crazy story. That's got to be up there pretty high on the list of crazy things that you hear from call centers.
Yeah, and it, you know, not to get into societal, it was one of those things where, right, I hope we end up in a society where that call just gets transferred to a social worker. Because really, that's what was happening. What was really happening was someone who was going, all I know how to do is send cops with guns and ambulance or what. Like, this is what is here. Like, the situation you're describing, I can send police, but so it's one of those that I hope that there's a bigger issue at play there. But yeah, correct. I mean, please, guys, I'm not endorsing that kind of language.
But what you're saying is true. They had not given that agent
tools.
Tools.
Yeah, like
there were no tools.
She heard the
ambulance, which the person doesn't want. I can send a cop, which we all know what They come with guns.
Yeah, right. Let's just say they bring guns. They don't show up with pillows. They show up with guns. Now, and it's, everyone knows what that means. So she's going, got two teenagers fighting. Now, would you be careful what you ask for, because I don't have what you want. Because what you really want is someone who's skilled at helping you
diffusing the situation.
Diffusing the situation. Yeah. Let's move on to questions from our community. Can you guys explain the best way to figure out if we are short-staffed or not efficient? And if you are listening, this I reworded that question to get to the heart of it, but I hope I captured it. But it's this conundrum. But are we just short-staffed, or can people be working harder? So what do you do to help diagnose which one is it?
So two things come to mind. First of all, I've really got to get inside my workforce metrics to understand what's really happening. I've got to look at things like average after work time. I've got to look at things like ACW. I've got to look at things like average talk time. What's my availability of my agents?
Shrinkage.
Shrinkage. What's the occupancy rate? Yep. I remember way back at ICMI, they weren't called ICMI at the time, with Brad Cleveland and Gordon McPherson in a conference, and for the first time understanding what occupancy was and realizing that occupancy is a direct proportion to the number of people I have on the phones, not a direct proportion to the number of how hard they're working. And in fact, if my occupancy is high, probably more than 83, 84%, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to burn people out and force them to take breaks, unscheduled breaks. Not that I ever did this as an agent, but there was a little thing you can do where you unplug your headset and you talk into nowhere. And so you don't.
A little me time.
The person on the line is going, hello, hello. And meantime, you've taken a little break. Now, if that's happening a lot and your occupancy is high, then that may indicate that people are overworked and therefore becoming inefficient. There's a great book called Call Center Fast Forward. Brad Cleveland. If you don't have that, it's the it's the Bible of workforce, and it will help you understand that if you're a supervisor or a manager who just really doesn't understand the metrics. But then the second piece to me is what are my good reps doing, and what do their statistics look like, and what does my mean rep look like, and how do I understand which one is the right one? I know my outliers, my negative outliers, I need to work with and I need to coach. Right. But if you're trying to figure out what does efficiency look like, take a look at you can walk through your call center and ask your supervisors, who's your best 3 reps out of the 20 on their team? They know who they are. Yep. And then look at what your mean is, your middle ground, and try to figure out, do we have outliers that are not efficient? Because it's probably not everyone's inefficient. It's probably some people are inefficient unless you have occupancy issues.
Yeah, and to the person who's answering this question, I think the best thing I could tell you is you're onto something, because those two things tend to be related, and there's a circular cause and effect that happens on this. That's, in the interest of time, I won't go too deep in, but just very quickly, what Bob was pointing out was this thing that sort of happens, which is you're a little bit short-staffed, right? You're not inefficient yet, you're short-staffed, so people are working too hard, meaning they're taking back-to-back calls, and there's not space. They're just da-da-da. Every time they log on, another one's coming in. Well, what starts to then happen is they're human beings. They will start to take unscheduled breaks, and they will come in the form of after call work to give me a little. They will come in the form of longer hold. Let me put this customer on hold. Let me breathe. They will come in form of those kinds of things. And next thing you know, your slightly short-staffed problem becomes a very short-staffed problem because you've now gotten inefficient, because you've gotten your short-staffed. You're just a little bit short-staffed. People were overworked. Then they start doing all of this. Then they get inefficient. Then and it impacts your handle time as well. You know how it impacts your handle time? Because I'm overworked back to back. This call is going to go longer, and you're going to think that's counterintuitive. It will go longer because I'm going to put this customer on hold longer so I can, and this whole time ends up in your handle time as well. So you are onto something. It's one of those things you have to unravel. Obviously, we're not going to do that on our show, but it's one of those things you have to unravel. But just in general, philosophically, always remember that these things always bleed into each other. You get a little short-staffed. I've never met an organization that was short-staffed that had efficiency metrics that look good. It just can't be done. They're human beings. No one is going to log into a queue and just get killed back to back calls, and you expect them not to start cheating a little, taking more breaks and doing that. You will get inefficient. So you're always sort of tweaking this. And Bob talked about the opposite as well. You get overstaffed, you have the opposite types of problems. So
yeah, work management is a whole lot more art than it is skill. Like,
it is.
You have to be able to look at things and correlate them and understand a lot about your center. That's the reason why way back in the late 80s, the first time I comprehended what that basically the book Fast Forward talks about, it turned on a light bulb. The power of one, the things we talked about agents coming back from break late, like all of these, it's the reason why we measure so much stuff, but it's the understanding of that stuff that matters.
Yep. Let's wrap up with words of wisdom. So today, what's on my mind is I read a quote. I can't remember who. So my apologies there. That said, we're not going to out-memorize AI. And this gentleman's more in the education sector, advocating for different ways of learning and that kind of thing. And it stuck with me. In our deal, we're not going to out-efficient AI in the contact center. Like all this sort of rote, simple things, AI is coming in that way. And so then what are the skills? What's now important looking forward? Humanity. Can you humanize your experience, even when technology is in there? So the skills we're looking for now is not the person who can memorize the knowledge base and knows where everything is. We're running a race with AI there, and AI is going to win. But where the humanity in contact center is, how good are you at solving really, really complex problems that involve humanity? The thing that's sort of uniquely human will become more valuable. So the can't out memorize AI is something that stuck with me, and I think leaders who are managing people should be thinking about that as they're thinking about skills and that kind of thing.
That's strong. We don't plan in advance of what we're going to use in this last quote. So I'm going in a totally different direction. I'll try to do the radio talk show tie-in by saying you were talking about humanity.
Yep.
And we're recording this in a week that have been a couple of mass shootings in the U.S.
Yes.
It is hard to fathom what the answers are to that, but the human toll is weighing heavy.
Yes.
At a time when we're already struggling as a human race around COVID, it's just hard to put your arms around. My quote is from Nelson Mandela. It says, "No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People must learn to hate. And if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite."
Wow.
And this last 2 weeks, this last week or so, 8-10 days, whatever it's been, have focused a lot on the mental aspects of what's wrong in America. And I just wanted to end with, while our hearts go out to
absolutely
Asian AAIP folks that are dealing with the day-to-day struggles of safety, and our hearts go out to folks that are just go to the store one day and never come home. And the contact center is a place where if you have 100 people, we're all at home right now, mostly in the contact center world, but if you have 100 people, you have a small demographic from everywhere.
Yes. Have the melting pot.
Have you thought about what your people are going through in this week? Have you reached out to your folks? Have you interacted with them about, are they okay? Are you okay? And when I ask that question, there needs to be a follow-up of, no, I mean, how are you?
Yeah.
Are you okay? So tough way to end a show that
no,
it doesn't go in those directions, but it's just been one of those weeks.
Absolutely. And guys, this contact center business, and all of us who are in it, it's a human business, and we cannot forget that. And you have lots of humans working for you who are dealing with these things and are wrestling with it. You don't have to have the answers at all. You just have to be another human being who can, who people just sort of think that, gosh, you care and you're concerned and you're treating them as a human being. So it's a great place to end things today. And again, another plug, please continue to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. We continue to have double-digit growth in subscriptions week after week, and we are humbled and excited, and hope that this show is bringing you information and some entertainment on a weekly basis. And we are honored to be let into your homes, cars, and wherever you are listening and watching us.
Video watching us in your car. But we're glad you're here. We cannot tell you enough how excited we are about you being here.
Hey, there are Teslas that are self-driving. So
okay, well, I would say something crass like, if you're working in a contact center, you're probably not driving a Tesla, but I won't go there either.
All right, everyone.
Edit that last one out.
Yes, we're trying to get subscribers here, Bob.
I'm just being realistic.
You're correct. We need to do a show about that, issuing Teslas to contact center agents.
There you go.
Thanks, everyone.
Have
a good week, and good seeing you, Bob. We'll talk soon.
We want to thank you for joining us on this episode of the Contact Center Show. If you would like to join the conversation, please visit us at contactcenter.tv. That is contact center, all one word, .tv. Or you can simply subscribe wherever you get your podcast. This has been a Beyond production.